where this triclosan is, or triclosan. And where is it? It's if you don't use aluminum chlorhydrate, which you shouldn't use, everything else in men's deodorant or men's deodorants are triclosan. All the antibacterial soaps shouldn't even be on the market. They're almost all triclosan. And folks, good soap and water does just as good a job. If you want to sterilize this table, you know what you do? You get a bottle of vinegar and a bottle of hydrogen peroxide, use one right after the other, and it actually cleans more germs off this table than Lysol. And Lysol has like 20 ingredients, all of which have 20 letters each. Back to my dad's rule, if you can't read it, you ought not to use it.
You know, along those lines, I understand that in New York City now, when the paramedics investigate crib deaths, SIDS deaths, the first thing they ask the people is, do you use Lysol as a cleaner?
Oh, wow.
And I know they're working on a connection there. I don't know if it's there, but if they're asking the question, somebody's real suspicious. I'm going to pass it down to John. Do you want to add anything to this discussion, John? Yeah. Or anybody along the way there? He's got his own microphone. Oh, think about it.
Oh, yeah.
What's the topic of the discussion?
Organic cleaning projects
Organic
and products
joy.
and detergents.
Well, go to the natural food stores and pick up what they've got in there. They usually have the cleanest stuff in town. But I don't have any comments other than if you're using a gray water system, which we'll all be doing before too long, you make sure that you don't ruin the soil out in your gardens by using some natural products. Gosh, we've been doing it so long, I don't think that there's anything new about it. I don't know about Lemon Joy, though. You know, there are organic lemons. And there's a lot of joy out there. I don't know if the two are in a product somewhere these days.
There are some other good products out there. Caldrea is one line that I really like.
Yeah.
I believe everything they make is organic. I don't know about 7th generation. I use it, but it's what you see in Whole Foods and places like that.
Absolutely.
There's some great cleaning products out there in addition to vinegar, to orange oil, to hydrogen peroxide. You don't have to use this crud that's out there. That's a combination of crud and crap, if you don't know what that is.
You
But
know,
anyway, that's what you're buying off the grocery store.
If you're an
shelf.
organic gardener, you don't switch to one of the chemicals when you're inside the house.
Yep.
You use organics inside the house. You'll use them to bathe in. You'll use them on your children. You don't switch when you leave the organic garden to some other style. When you go to the grocery store, you buy organics there. One tomato's about $2.71, something like that. I priced one the other day. That's why you ought to grow your own at home.
Yep.
And finally, go to the farmers market. Support these farmers that are around the area, these good organic farmers. They're working real hard to use natural products so that the spectrum of products, whether it's for cleaning or medicinal herb alternatives, all of these things are now coming to the forefront once again. It's the 70s all over.
And buy local is really a great idea that we need to talk more about sometime.
Absolutely.
Judy, this obviously is right up your alley. Why are heirloom vegetables better and superior to extension recommended varieties?
Sandra doesn't know.
Well, yeah, that's one thing. Monsanto doesn't own them. One of the best things they're working on it. They're developing new heirloom varieties now.
Sound like old Red Skelton Steel antiques made while you wait?
It's true. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal, I think, last week about the new heirloom. But one of the reasons they're great, which is what John mentioned, is that you can propagate them year after year after year without anybody helping, without any scientist crossbreeding. They will become more and more, as Malcolm said, adapted to your garden as the years go by. And you can share them with your neighbors. They are adapted to begin with because we wouldn't have them if they weren't sturdy, hardy plants. They would have died out a long time ago. The fact that they're still around after many generations means they can take a variation in climates. They can take drought years and wet years and hot years and cold years and still keep going. And there are heirloom everythings, not just vegetables. There are herbs and trees and flowers and perennials and annuals and everything. So once you start getting interested in them, you know, and I think there are a lot of reasons why they're better. But once you start getting interested in them, you'll find that they have great stories that go with them, for one thing. And that's always fun. And Malcolm's grandpa's uncle's nephew, if you know who all these connections are, it makes them more interesting to grow. And I have plants that came from friends and relatives from my mother's house that burned down 10 years ago, you know, and so keeping the story going. There's also the issue of genetic diversity, which is essential to keeping us all healthy and alive. We don't want to lose what diversity we have, and we lose plant species every year like crazy.
How do you find heirloom? What is an heirloom in your mind?
Usually an heirloom is open pollinated. You don't have to have any intervention. It's been around a generation or two. You know, it's kind of like old roses. They're antique roses, they're old roses, they're roses you really like but you have a hard time finding, and they kind of fall into that category too. There are sources, and there are more sources than you may think, for heirloom seeds. You just have to look for them, and they're more turning up every year in the nurseries as transplants. I'm sure you had a lot of tomatoes this year that were heirloom transplants because growers are growing them, and seeds have changed. Baker Creek, they're territorial seeds, native seed search, and of course the big grandfather of them all, the big seed exchange, Seed Savers Exchange, which has growers all over the country. So once you start looking for them, you can find them, and they're fun to experiment with and find the ones that will do best in your garden.
Any the rest of y'all want to comment on that?
Not so much on that, but I'd like to tell you some good news. My first farm, the county agent in San Antonio, was Sam Cotner. By the time I bought the second farm, I did it all organic. The second farm was all organic. Sam Cotner went back to A&M, get his PhD, and he became boss over all of the ag department. Well, Dr. Joe Novak up there, he was 100% organic. He used to bring his students to my farm, and he'd sneak around the corner and tell me about how bad their garden was and their farmland was around A&M, and around his little estate everything was perfect because it did it all organic. I kept telling him, I said, work on Sam Cotner. So I worked on Sam Cotner, that was his boss. Now, they're teaching organic gardening at Texas A&M.
All right.
Okay, I'm going to throw this mainly at Stuart and at John. When would humate be used on the lawn, and what are the advantages of humate? I guess probably one of y'all ought to start out talking about exactly what humate is. John, why don't you start off, and then we'll throw it Stuart's way.
Go ahead. Well, it's basically a very concentrated compost, ancient millions-of-year-old compost. That's how I look at it. It comes in a granular and a liquid, and if you want to build soil quickly instead of waiting for compost over time, get in there and use some of the humates. We use them in our products, and I think it's a catalyst for the healthy soil. There may be some other descriptions that are better of it, but certainly that's how I look at this particular product. So we do use it, we do recommend it, and I put it in my products too. You can look at our Terra Tonic, a good way of feeding the soil. That's the #1 ingredient in there. I believe in it as a great way to kickstart an organic program and then use it for maintenance purposes. So that's how I look at humates and use them.
Humates are going to come in two forms. You've got dry humates and you have liquid humates that have already been extracted. Dry humate is usually the ore, easy to apply. It lasts a long time. One application of dry humic acid may still be releasing a little bit for 10 years. In the liquid form, it's immediately able to be used. It's usually extracted with a low pH, and all of the material is soluble. One of the main benefits of humic acid is to complex nutrients and keep them more effective and active longer. Also a good source of food for fungi and fungal cultures. So you can just apply it either way, liquid or dry.
Are humates humates? Is there a difference? Should people look for
if you want to go out and buy humates, is something specific you ask for, or most dry humates? And I think Elaine Ingham made the comment one time that when you talk about humic acid, there's something like 500,000 different kinds of humic acids.
Correct. Humic acid, usually when someone says humic acid, they mean, or when they say humate, they mean a lot of humic acids. It's just like